Hi, this is an intro and a brief video demonstration of the war game ApexWar. ApexWar is a simulated hypothetical World War III scenario between two superpowers, where all the involved elements have been reduced to a logic-based algorithm like chess. You play the president and decision maker for one superpower entity against an opponent superpower. You have at your command navies, armies, missile defense, Patriot missile defense, special forces marines, air forces, ICBM defense, satellite, radar, secret service agents, a double agent, your president, and logistical infrastructure and facilities. The map is a hypothetical world map and is of a black and white checkered format, like a black and white grid checkered format, and it's been configured into 24 24 files marked alphabetically and 50 ranks marked numerically. Running down the middle of the board from one end to the other is the line of equator, which divides the board into two hemispheres, the north and the south. And the board is further color configured into several zones. So you have the blue zones representing the ocean, the brown zone that representing land territory, the green zones representing the forests, the purple zones representing strategic territory, the dark blue zones representing space and lower orbit. Now, this configuration marks the board into, formats the board into, right in the middle here you've got international waters, that's the blue zone, and then on this side you've got, on the west side of the board you've got one superpower, on the east side of the board you've got another superpower. Now, each of these color configured zones divided by the line of equator into a northern zone and a southern zone is in itself an individual theater of battle, and the board consists of a total 20 theaters of battle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So, with respect to gameplay, as we'll come to further in the description of ApexWar, the 20 zones makes it possible for an individual player to make up to 20 moves a turn. The Navy is based, the Navy formation is based on a chess setup where you've got the aircraft carrier representing the king, the advanced destroyer representing the queen, and moves, the aircraft carrier moves just like the king, the advanced destroyer moves just like the queen. You've got the Aegis cruiser representing the bishop and moves just like the bishop. The attack submarine, representing the knight and moves just like the knight. The littoral combat vessel, representing the rook and moves just like the rook. The jet fighters, representing the pawns and moves just like the pawns, though there are special rules that apply to them with respect to promotion. The same format is represented. Well, the army is configured based on the same chess format, where you've got the Humvee representing, well, the general representing the king and moves just like the king. The Apache gunship representing the queen and moves just like the queen. The multiple rocket launch system representing the bishop and moves just like the bishop. The heavy tank representing the knight and moves just like the knight. The howitzer representing the rook and moves just like the rook. The APC representing the pawn and just moves just like the pawn. And then you've got your Patriot missile defense force. You've got several Patriot missile trucks, and they move similar to knights in an L formation, in an L format, sorry. And then you've got your Special Forces Marines over here, a V-22 Osprey for transporting troops. Moves similar to a king and a bishop. So you can either move like a king or a bishop. And then you've got your Chinook transporter helicopters for transporting troops and equipment, like the Osprey. Moves similar to a king and a rook. And then you've got your stealth helicopter, and that moves like a knight. And then you've got your majors, two majors, special forces. They move similar to pawns but in any direction. So they move horizontally but kill diagonally but in any direction. You've got your sergeants. They move similar to your queens in the Thai chess version of Makruk. So they just move and kill one step diagonally. And then you've got your battle tanks, and they move similar to knights. The board, by the way, is configured in a black and white format, and you've got your amphibious landing carrier for transporting the army and special forces and some facilities and equipment. You've got your air forces, where you've got your advanced fighters. They move similar to they move like pawns but capture diagonally. Then you got your A-10 tank buster for supporting the army, and they move like queens. And I would like to correct that the Apache gunship moves similar to a king or a bishop. and the A10 tank buster moves like a queen. These are your UAV predators, and they move similar to the queens in Macrook. Now, I'd like to point out that army units and special forces units cannot attack air force units that are already airborne and operational. If they are still in base, just like they are in this setup, then they can be attacked. But once they're operational and airborne, army units and special forces units cannot attack air force units. Also, air force units include the B-52 stealth bomber, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, that moves similar to a queen, and also has the ability to carry payload of cruise missiles or nuclear missiles. It can carry up to two. And then you've got B-52 Strato bombers. They move similar to a bishop and a king, and they have the ability to carry a payload of 4 missiles. Then you have the C5 Galaxy transporter. It moves similar to a king and a rook, and it's for transporting the army, the marines, and equipment. Then you have the Stratotanker for refueling air force units to increase their range. Then you have the C-130 transporter for ferrying army and marine units and equipment as well. The C5 Galaxy has a payload of 4 transport bays. The C-130 has a payload of 4 transport bays, but can't carry as much as the C5 Galaxy. Then you have the C-130 spy plane for EMP and espionage attacks, and then you have your standoff weapons, your nuclear deterrents, the nuclear submarine, capable of carrying a payload of 6 ICBMs, and your mobile nuclear truck, which can only carry 1. But then it's possible to ferry the mobile nuclear truck to the opponent side of the board and make it operational there. Then you've got your nuclear missile force, your ICBM force, consisting of cruise missiles and nuclear missiles. So you've got 18 in each hemisphere, 18 cruise missiles in each hemisphere. That's a total of 36 cruise missiles, and 9 nuclear missiles in each hemisphere. So that's a total of 18 nuclear missiles. Then you've got your satellites. Your satellites are, there's some pieces in the game that are flagship pieces, flag bearer pieces, and they are very important. They must be protected at all costs, and your satellites are some of the most important ones, because with your navies, your aircraft carriers are your flag bearers for each navy. So just like in chess, when the king is captured, all the pieces associated with that king get taken off the board. So if your aircraft carrier is captured or destroyed, his subordinate forces get taken off the board. So your aircraft carriers are your admirals in rank and are very important. Now, the same applies to the army with the generals in the Humvee. They sit back, control the battle, send orders and instructions, and they must be protected at all costs. They are the flag bearers for the army. Now, for the Air Force, there's no particular flag bearer, but your top ranking Air Force officer is the Air Marshal in the B-2 stealth bomber. Your another flag bearer is your double agent here. But before I get to him, I'll round up with the satellites. Now, you have 3 satellites. One controls the Army, one controls the Navy, one controls the Air Force. Now, just like if I take out one of your admirals or your aircraft carriers, you take out that Navy, and then I take out the second aircraft carrier, and then I have to take out your second Navy. Now, there's a way of taking out the 2 navies in one move. If I can launch an ICBM strike and take out one of your satellites, like the Army satellite, then you lose communication with your Army. Or the Navy satellites, you lose communication with your Navy, and they get taken off the board. Same thing applies with the Air Force. And if this happens, you're only left with your Special Forces Marines and your ICBM Strike Force and your Secret Service and your missile defense and some of your facilities. Now, the satellites move one step in either a horizontal or vertical direction, and that's it. And they cannot move to lower orbit. This rank here represents lower orbit. These represent space. The satellites can only move about in space, one step at a time, not diagonally, just horizontally and vertically. The radar station is another critical piece, because the radar station serves as a link between your 3 satellites and the president in the bunker. If your radar station gets destroyed, you lose your navies, your armies, and your air forces in one move. So this is a very valuable piece. Then in the bunker, you've got your spies. They're the only PCs who do not have to traverse the whole board to attack the president on the other side. They can move from one bunker directly to another bunker. In their own bunker, they move one step, they move like pawns, but one step in any direction, and capture one step in a diagonal direction. And then you have your double agent. In his bunker, he moves like a knight. But the double agent is very important, because if your double agent is captured, he becomes a member of the other side and now turns against you. And if the other side moves their 4 spies into your bunker with their double agent and then capture your double agent, suddenly they have the numbers advantage on you. So it's very important to protect your double agents. Now, it's also important to bear in mind that the spies in their bunkers move move like pawns, one step in any direction, capturing diagonally, but can't move diagonally. But when they move to the opposite bunker, they operate like knights. They move in the L direction. Now with the double agent, in his bunker he moves in the L direction, but when he moves to the opposite bunker, he moves like a pawn in any direction but can only capture diagonally. This is a computer access point to the mainframe computers in the bunker. This is a very important piece. It's not mobile, it just sits here all through the game, but it's a piece that can determine how quickly the game ends sometimes. And this, the presidential chopper, the presidential helicopter, this is important at the end game if the president has to play for a stalemate. You've got missile silos where you can launch your ICBMs from, your cruise missiles and nuclear missiles from. You've got airports where your Air Force units take off from. You've got docks where your amphibious carrier and nuclear submarine units take off from. Now, how does this whole game play out now? Like I said before, each colored zone, each colored part of the board represents a zone, and each zone is divided into two by the line of equator. So you've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, this zones, yeah, they're divided into 3, but that's the bunker makes up the third, but it's a special zone. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 zones. Now, to play the game, each player can move a piece in each zone they have their forces in. So if you've got your forces in only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 zones, you can only make a maximum 11 moves in one turn. So if you manage to spread your forces all through the board and manage to occupy all 20 zones, you can make up to 20 moves in one turn. And when you get to the stage where you're making anywhere from 18, 19, 20 moves a turn, it could be said that a state of total war has been imposed. Now, I'll try and demonstrate gameplay as best as I can. And this is an epic scaled game representing an epic scaled war, and it could be played as quickly as a couple of hours or could drag out for months. And as a result, there are different ways to go about playing this game, and just like a real war, you might have a plan, but hey, will that plan work? Now, the aim of this game is to capture your opponent's president. At your disposal, you've got all your forces. Amongst those forces, you've got special flag bearers that control those unit forces. and they are important. As much as you have to protect your president, you have to try and protect your flag bearers, because their capture or destruction weakens you in significant numbers. Now, everything else is cannon fodder. I mean, the game engine of the game is based a lot on chess. You know, some moves have been modified, but that's about where all the similarity ends. You can't really get sentimental about certain pieces, because, you know, you could set up a classic chess formation in this theater, and then I upset that whole formation by moving a very powerful asset into that theater with ICBMs. Now, I'll describe how the ICBMs work. The cruise missiles move like bishops in a diagonal direction, but they can only move in the direction they are launched. So once they are launched in west to east direction, that's the only direction they will be able to move in. They can zigzag across the board, but they can't zigzag back. The nuclear missiles move like knights. They, similar to the cruise missiles, they can only move in one direction, from east to west or from west to east. And they can, you know, crisscross the board in that direction, but never back. And then also, like I described earlier with the standoff weapons, capable of ferrying the missiles, I'll demonstrate how to load one of them now, or how to arm one of them. Now I'm arming the stealth B2 stealth bomber with one cruise missile and one nuclear missile. They've got platforms for carrying the missiles and moving them around. And how they operate is just a demonstration. Now, if you've launched your B2 bomber in the game, and it's armed with a cruise missile and a nuclear missile, you can launch the missile from the B2 bomber. So to launch a cruise missile, you move it in a diagonal direction from the position of the B2 bomber at your opponent. And the missiles are single attack units. Once they attack and destroy an opponent unit, they get taken off the board. The cruise missiles cannot attack area, but the nuclear missiles can. And the cruise missiles can destroy a maximum of 3 opponent units, or including any friendly units within the blast zone. So if a cruise missile attacks this pawn and destroys it, the next diagonal square to the point of impact and next horizontal square, the next vertical square and next horizontal, the next horizontal square and next vertical square from the point of impact, the pieces within those squares get destroyed as well. Now with the nuclear missiles, if a nuclear missile strikes or I'll demonstrate that better. If a nuclear missile strikes this pawn, every diagonal square from the point of impact, every piece in that in those positions gets destroyed. And then every horizontal and vertical square from the point of impact, any piece within those cannot be moved for one turn as a result of EMP fallout. And then the missile, the nuclear missile itself gets taken off the board too. As I said, it's a single attack weapon. Okay, so I'll try and just give it to like a overview of the gameplay strategy. Now, there are several ways to start. I guess the classic way is to start with the navies and try to gain sea superiority. Try and dominate the ocean, because if you can dominate the ocean, it makes it safer for you to ferry your army across to the opponent's side using your amphibious carrier, and you landing your army on the opponent's side, and then you attempt to defeat the opponent's army so that you can storm the opponent's bunker to take the president. Now, you can move the army using the amphibious carrier without gaining sea superiority, but it's riskier, because if the amphibious carrier gets destroyed while out at sea with an army on board, the whole army gets lost as well. So the amphibious carriers, when they are ferrying PCs, have to be protected. Now, the amphibious carriers move similar to pawns on their very first move, as in they can take 2 steps or 1 step forward, or kings. They can move 1 step in any direction. So moves like a king and moves like a pawn on its first move, 1 or 2 steps forward towards the enemy territory. And they've got transport bays for ferrying troops, equipment. They've got a total of 6 transport bays, and they're your heaviest carriers. The C-130s have 4 transport bays. The C-5 Galaxies have 4 transport bays as well, but these ferry your army, the C-130 and the C-5 Galaxy, and the C-130 ferries your Special Forces Marines. And then so to open the war, you could start with your classic sea battle, try gain sea superiority, make it safer to ferry your army across, invade. I'll try to demonstrate that. Basically, to invade, you have to safely move your amphibious carrier to one of your enemy docks. Now, if you capture an enemy dock by moving an amphibious carrier to the front of it, it becomes yours, and then you land your army here in this zone. The enemy can remain in the classic formation upon your army's arrival, or during the game set up defensively in wait for your army's arrival invasion. The Patriot missile trucks are used to defend against ICBMs. They move similar to knights, and they're used to defend. They can shoot down nuclear missiles, cruise missiles, and Air Force units. And I think it's also important to note that Army and Marine units cannot attack airborne Air Force units. They can attack them while they are stationed in base, but not while they are operational in the air. So you can choose to grind out the battle first on sea, then on land, and then try storm the bunker, the red zone, or you could get your spies involved. And spies are important because they're the only PCs that don't have to traverse across the whole board. Spies literally move straight into the opponent's bunker, and they have a portal of access, so they can move into any of these squares and to access, and they can move to and fro theirs and the opponent's bunker. And remember, in their bunker they move like pawns but in any direction and capture diagonally. Move like pawns but in a horizontal vertical direction and only capture diagonally. But in the opponent's bunker they move like knights, so they become quite powerful. And now your spies, you can send as many spies as you want. You can send all your spies, or just one, just to try create havoc. But if you send your 4 spies and your double agent, you still outnumbered in the enemy bunker by 1. The president himself, he moves like a king and captures as well, and so you could try use tactics, send all your spies, try outmaneuver them even though they've got the numbers on you. Or you could send 1 or 2, however many spies you want. But if you can get one of your spies to move and place him on the same square as the access point to the opponent's mainframe, then it's possible to enact a nuclear strike on the enemy bunker. Normally during the game, you can't nuke the opponent's bunker. If you send a nuke to it, nothing happens. It will be impervious to it because you're kind of nuking blind. But if you send a spy to infiltrate the enemy bunker, access their computers, download you the coordinates, and then launch a nuke to the bunker, then you can effectively win the game by nuking the enemy president. Fair enough, your spy dies too, but war comes with tough decisions, I guess. Yeah, I guess war is so serious. What really matters is winning sometimes. But yeah. Right, so yeah, you have to do what you have to do, I guess. Now, just like in chess, the president can play for a stalemate, and not just by trying to play into a tight box where he can't be attacked, and the opponent does not have any further legal moves, he can actually make a run for stalemate. Now, if the tide of battle is against the president or against one side, and he sees his bunker is about to get invaded, if the president can, upon the invasion of the bunker, make his way to the presidential chopper, then it's an instant stalemate. The game's drawn. The president's spirited away. But the president can only begin to move towards the chopper or mount the chopper as soon as his bunker gets invaded. He can move around during the game, but he can only mount the chopper as soon as his bunker gets invaded. Now, there's so many elements of this game that I'm trying to... Now, the Air Force units effectively take off from the tiles with the airports, and they begin to move there. Now, the B2 stealth bomber moves like a queen, and it can effectively... It's one of the most powerful weapons in the game, because apart from being able to carry missiles, it can traverse the board in great swoops. Now, there's an aspect to the game called zonal phasing. Now, remember, the game is divided into 20 different theaters, and each theater is its own individual battle. Now, but that does not mean the PCs cannot move beyond whatever theaters they operate in. They can operate in whatever theater, but they have to phase in a series of 2 moves, in a sequence of 2 moves, from one theater to the next. So if this stealth bomber was operating in this theater and you needed to move him to operate in that theater, he'll have to be phased in 2 moves, effectively two turns. So the first move will be on 1 turn to move him into the theater you wanted, corresponding to his moving abilities. Moves like a queen, so you can move him this way or that way. So you move him into the theater you wanted, but just 1 grid square on the other side of the line of equator. And then on the second move, he can begin to independently operate in that theater. And I think this serves to give the game a lot of strategic and tactical structure. And it creates a very strategic structure to the game, where suddenly you can have a multiplayer element to it, where you can have as much as 7 players on one side playing against 7, or in the economic expansion, which I'll talk about in another video, as much as 8 or 10 players playing on each side. Now, 7 players on each side. Yep. 1 player, that's 1 admiral controlling 1 navy, another player controlling a 2nd navy, another player controlling 1 army, another player controlling the 2nd army, another player controlling 1 air force, another player controlling the 2nd air force, and then 1 player controlling the president. You can even have 8 players, another player controlling the special forces, or you could group the special forces with the army, or and then we'll group the special forces, the army, and the missile defense. And then the player controlling the president controls the spies and the satellites and radar. Or you could have 4 players. One player controlling the navies. He's like the top admiral.